Let's take this spot in my backyard and with the magic of YouTube, turn it into a garden. Okay, well, maybe I have to put in some hard work first. Any yard work is hard work in my books. Luckily, I have my husband to help with this project. We rented this rototiller from Home Depot and he got right to work rototilling up the area that we're going to put my garden. Next, we teamed up together and my husband and I put down the weed blocking tarp. Alright, if you are new to my channel, typically I have furniture flips to watch, but I have a few DIY projects I'm doing around the house and the yard, so I will be kind of sprinkling those in here and there. Teamwork makes dream work. All right, I made a trip to Home Depot and got tons of 2x4s, some 4x4s, corrugated metal, and some lattice. And we're going to put this together to make some raised garden beds. The garden beds I'm making are rectangle in shape, so I am measuring, cutting over and over and over again, cutting out the pieces to make the frame of my short sides and then frame for the long sides of my garden bed. It will make sense here in a minute after I kind of place it together. And for those of you who are interested in making garden beds like this, I will put the measurements down below in the description for you. After setting the boards in place for the long sides, they're pretty long, so I decided to put some pieces in the middle to give the long sides a little bit of extra bracing. And here's a little trick that I learned. When you're cutting multiple pieces of wood, they can stick, so use some Johnson's paste wax on the surface. You can do this for your miter saw or table saw, and it helps the wood slide a lot easier when cutting. Next, I use my Kreg jig to drill pocket holes in the pieces to assemble them together. So I screwed 2 pocket holes on the top and bottom piece of each rectangle section. I did 2 pocket holes at each end of the boards. And I had a lot of boards, so I did this over and over and over again. This project was a lot of hard work, but once you see the end, it was definitely worth it. If you've never used a Kreg jig before, no worries. The pamphlet comes in the kit and it tells you what thickness of wood, so what size of screws, what type of screws, and even what holes you should drill on the thickness of wood that you're working with. So super easy. On the left and right pieces of each rectangle side, I drilled 3 holes because those are going to attach to some 4x4s and will make sense here in a minute. After drilling 1,000,000 pocket holes with the Kreg jig, I started laying my pieces out to assemble the sides together. I am using these outdoor 2.5-inch screws, Kreg jig screws for soft wood since this is pine. For the long sides of my garden beds, I did go ahead and attach 2 pieces spaced out in the middle to help brace it more. And here's what the long pieces look like all assembled. We carried them out back to where the garden was and started to assemble them together. I lined up and attached my short side of my garden box to a 4x4, turned it over, added the long side to make like an L shape, and then set those up and just repeated that process over and over and put the L's together to make a rectangle. And you can see on the outside, I have long 2 or 4x4s, and once it's all together, it'll make sense why I'm leaving them long on the outside. And this is what they look like, the frames put together, all assembled. I have a nice big U-shape above ground garden boxes. These ended up being a lot larger than what I had envisioned in my head, but I'm in love with the final outcome, so it was worth it. Next, let's cut some metal here to fill the sides so all the dirt doesn't pour out. So I'm measuring in between 4x4 posts so I know how large to or small to cut the pieces of metal. And this is just corrugated metal that I got from Home Depot. I measured it out according to the garden box sizes that I had built and used some tin snips to cut them down to size. There are a few different ways to cut corrugated metal, but these tin snips are easy to use and really effective. After putting the metal sheets into place, I secured them using some 1-inch roofing screws. Now, the inside of the boxes are going to be filled with lawn scraps and dirt, so you don't have to get really crazy with the screws here. Just put enough into place to hold the metal, and the dirt should do the rest. All right, back to some more measuring, cutting, and making pocket holes. I'm going to add the lattice to the outside of the boxes above the raised bed. So I want to frame it out to have a secure place to attach my lattice sides to. And again, the long sides of the garden boxes is a pretty long area, so we measured the middle and added a piece there in the middle just for extra support to attach the lattice to. All right, garden beds this large would cost a lot of money to fill with dirt, so we're going to use nature to help. I filled with twigs first from tree trimming for our springtime, and then also we saved all the raked up leaves from our yard, and I poured a layer of leaves on top of the twigs. Next, I bought bags of just the cheapest mulch that I could find at Home Depot and did a layer of mulch, and then came back and filled the rest of the way with dirt and spread it out and smoothed it out, and then they are ready to plant. Now that the boxes are filled, let's add the lattice on the outside. The 2 fronts of the garden boxes are short sides, so I'm just cutting the lattice down to size to fit to the 4x4s there. On the long sides, the 8-foot lattice panels are the perfect size, so I just hang those up and I secure them into place with some nails. I was doing this part by myself, so I did put a nail in the middle to hook the lattice onto first, and then went around and attached my nails all the way around. And this is where we're at with the lattice all the way on the outside. So the boxes ended up being larger than what I had originally planned. So I have a 3-foot ruler and I am measuring the outlines 3 feet on each side with the shovel. And as my husband does the rototiller, I am planting. I have blackberries, blueberries, and elderberry plants to put on the outside. And that's why I did the lattice, so they have something to grow up. I added a little bit more of the weed blocking tarp so I won't have to weed very often throughout the summer. And then my husband came back and did a rock border. The previous owners of our home were rock crazy, so we have these rocks all over the perimeter of our yard, in the yard. So we just collected them together and made a border for the outside of the garden beds. I then used bags of black mulch to mulch the outside after I got done planting all the plants. For the inside walkway, I put some stepping stones down and then added mulch to that as well to make a nice little path in my garden. After that, I set my intention on planting my plants in the garden boxes. I'm in Oklahoma, so I did tomatoes, okra, peppers, zucchini, squash, and also planted some spinach and Brussels sprouts. I love garden tomatoes so much, I could just pick them off the vine and eat them like an apple. Yum. I also added some hanging plants to the outside, and then I ordered these solar lights off Amazon and put those around the perimeter of the garden, and also got a wind chime off Amazon, and it is Love Your Neighbor or Like Your Neighbor wind chime, and the tunes are just beautiful. The last thing I had to do is water everything. Here is a quick reminder of just a little spot of land that we started with. And with YouTube magic, here is our after. All right, this project was a lot of physical labor and it was a little pricey to originally start with. You know, next year I'll just have to add a little bit of soil to the garden boxes, but you know, my ground's not level, so this isn't perfect, but I love the way that it turned out. And I already have some things that are already growing. I have some little baby blackberries that have started to sprout, and also blueberries. And there is the 4x4s that are setting up above. I haven't decided if I want to string solar lights or cut them off. Let me know what you think. That is all I have for you guys today. I hope you enjoyed this project. As always, until next time.